what I'd like to do is share a few of the insights that we learned. These are some of the people that we interviewed. So we've interviewed the founder and the founder and executive chairman of Evernote. We talked to Dave McClure at 500 Startups. We talked to some of the major banks, trade associations, some of the people in Silicon Valley that really have a perspective with respect to how the Silicon Valley works and what are the right things that international companies should do when they're trying to access all the resources that are there in Silicon Valley. We talked to some of the universities there. We talked to a ton of startups, a lot of very small companies, some companies that have scaled. And we talked to some of the outside trade associations like Apex Brazil to help understand what their perspective is on Silicon Valley as well. One thing that we learned was really important. In Silicon Valley, we have this perspective of I can. It's all possible, it's all possible, it's all possible. What I have found in a lot of parts around the world is this. That's a significant differentiator from Silicon Valley and other parts of the world. A lot of people believe, I can't, it's not possible, we lack this resource, we lack this, we lack that. And so that starting perspective with how entrepreneurs look at starting their business or growing their business is one of the fundamental differences, I think, of the perspective, the attitude, the culture in Silicon Valley that makes it so unique. Everybody there kind of believes that regardless of what happens, we can make something happen there. And the tougher times are, the more creative and innovative people get. I think that when you look at some of the great companies around the world, a lot of them were started during very tough economic times. And Brazil is in a very tough economic situation right now. And it's going to take a very long time to come out of where you are today. If you look at how long it's taken the United States to kind of recover from the 2008 financial crisis, it's going to take equally as long here in Brazil. So my point is that the starting perspective that you have, how you begin your business, how you look at your ecosystem, how you look at how you help one another and grow your businesses, the starting point of I can do anything, it's all possible is a fundamental differentiator for success or the size of growth that happens in a regional ecosystem. So keep that in mind when you're talking about, what's going to happen here in Brazil and what can help you be more successful. Extreme uncertainty is a very normal thing. How many of you guys know exactly where you're going to be 6 months from now in your business? Yeah, not a lot of hands went up. Okay, so uncertainty is a big part of building your company. You have to be comfortable with that. You have to understand that it's going to happen. There is one way to sort of avoid that uncertainty, and it's called hindsight. So hindsight is a very precise science. So when you're looking in the rearview mirror and you said, hey, we did this, we did that, we did this, you can kind of dissect it and figure out, what you did right, what you did wrong. So it's a very precise way of figuring out what works and what doesn't. And so the point is for CEOs to learn from is to figure out how we're not going to make those mistakes again and how we're going to probably end up making different mistakes in the future. I know a lot of investors in Silicon Valley that invest in serial entrepreneurs because they know that serial entrepreneurs are not going to make that whole set of mistakes they made on that company, but they're going to be obviously avoiding those and doing something different in the future. So hindsight is a really important learning tool. One thing we like in Silicon Valley is people that think differently, to quote a very cliche, think out of the box. They're different, they have big visions, they have crazy ideas, they're called innovators, but we like people that think very differently. And we're not interested in copycat products in Silicon Valley. We're not interested in somebody coming in and doing the next Facebook or doing the next Amazon, things like that. So we're always interested in people with big visions, great ideas, kind of out of the box thinking. And that's something that I think differentiates Silicon Valley. And one thing that you can think of with respect to the ecosystem here in Brazil, what are some of the ways that you guys can, come up with the craziest ideas and the most innovative things that you can do to build your companies and build your products? One of the speakers yesterday talked about ideas having no value. I totally agree with that. Your ideas are cheap. The execution is really where it's at. And in all the people we interviewed for our book, they all said kind of the same thing. We're looking at product and market traction of the team, not so much about how grand or beautiful or creative the idea is. It's all about execution. So this is about getting stuff done. Andrea from 500 Startups talked about diversity yesterday. She presented a number of stats about why diversity is really important. My point on diversity is this, is I think if you're looking at valuations of companies, diverse companies build better products, better companies, and in the end, better valuations for their companies. So that's another reason to look at why diversity is important. I think you tend to, if you work with people that are different than you tend to think differently about what you're doing. You tend to act differently, and you tend to move differently going into the market. The whole process of being an entrepreneur, it's about iteration, it's about experimentation, it's about trying stuff. So you have to have a culture that supports that experimentation, that supports that risk-taking, that supports the mistakes that are going to be made. Because when you're a startup entrepreneur, you're going to make a ton of mistakes every day, every week, every month. Sometimes they're little mistakes, sometimes they're catastrophic, huge mistakes. But the point is that you've got to have a culture that supports and encourages the process of iteration or experimentation. Otherwise, it gets harder and harder to develop that ongoing pipeline of entrepreneurs that we need that create economic diversity, job creation, and help bring our economies up to the next level. We found learning to say no and staying focused was a key attribute of entrepreneurs all around the world. We talked to a number of Brazilian entrepreneurs, and they all said, I've had this experience in my business where I've had to say no to a product that the customer wanted me to build that was not on my product roadmap. It was going to take us off track. It was going to divert us. It was going to basically take away from our opportunities to achieve our goals. So focus and saying no is a very important attribute that we found with entrepreneurs. And we've interviewed entrepreneurs all over the world about this.